When Donald Trump ran for president in 2016 and eventually won, he did so with a key campaign promise. He said he would drain the swamp. And his supporters watched his time in office. They saw Trump continually get attacked by the establishment media. They saw one fake hit piece after another rise and then fall against him. And they also watched as many of Trump's appointees backstabbed him and betrayed him. And now they're watching as the attacks against Trump continue. They watch as laws are being altered in attempts to take him down, like District Attorney Alvin Bragg changing a misdemeanor to a felony without even stating the law Trump broke to justify that, and despite all the other issues. They watched the raid on Trump's home at Mar-a-Lago get allowed, notably after President Biden revoked Trump's executive privilege. And then it turned out that Biden and others also did what Trump's being accused of, took classified documents home. And then people generally expect, I think by now, that they're going to continue to watch as similar attacks like this emerge, all trying to take down Trump. Now look, the initial sentiment after Trump left office was that he failed to drain the swamp. But the new sentiment is that he did drain the swamp. The water went down, and the nation is now seeing all the creatures, all those swamp monsters that used to be below the surface. And now they're seeing something else. Folks, despite the near constant attacks on Trump, despite the establishment system and entertainment, politics, and media mostly opposing him, and like him or not, Trump is still the undisputed leader in Republican politics. I mean, at least based on polling. According to a Fox News survey of Republican primary voters, they're saying this: Trump has around 53% support. DeSantis has around 21%. Pence has 6%, Nikki Haley 4%, Ramaswamy 3%. It says Greg Abbott, Chris Christie, Larry Elder, Chris Sununu, and Glenn Youngkin, they're close to 1% support each. Asa Hutchinson, Kristi Noem, Francis Suarez, they're at less than 1%. What does that mean? In other words, there are many candidates running against Trump, and each represents a different idea of Republican politics, really. But if you were to take every one of them and combine them together into like a super candidate, Trump would still be projected to beat them. Now, ironically, the attacks on Trump seem to have helped him in the polls rather than hurt him. Since February, DeSantis actually dropped 7 points in favor and Trump rose 10 points. Now, those numbers actually say a whole lot more than just, votes and so on. They actually represent something much deeper. These numbers show how Republicans view these weekly psyops being almost regularly flashed across the screens. The raid on Mar-a-Lago, Stormy Daniels, the Soros DA, the insurrection, narratives of racism and MAGA extremists, none of those have turned people away from Trump. Again, rather than that, they seem to be driving people to vote for him, at least saying they're going to vote for him. In other words, what does that mean? It means people aren't buying it. And when people don't buy what just about every single trustworthy source is saying, well, guess what? That's going to freak out the powers that be. The reality is this: that MAGA movement Trump has, Make America Great Again, that is actually a completely different political party. It's not quite Republican, and it's not quite Democrat. What it really represents is the anti-establishment policies of both the old Republicans and the old Democrats combined into a new political movement. It's populism. It's everything in old politics that made people feel the government actually represented their interests. And the old guard Republicans and Democrats, meanwhile, they're being forced both to oppose this new party and all the ideas that they embraced in different ways, you could say, while trying to maintain the identity of really what I think the goals were. The results of this, well, they've transformed into the uniparty. They've turned into the globalists. They're the progressives of transsexualism and race politics and all the woke ideas that really swept the country mainly under Obama. They're the war party. They're ironically the party of corporatism and of global interests of financial powers like the World Economic Forum, again allied with the United Nations. In other words, folks, it's not a good image for them. At least not if they're trying to appeal to American interests or average Americans. And maybe that's why they're so mad at Trump. They see Trump as the divider. He took the populist ideas from both sides of the aisle and then combined them to create what's really a new party within the skin of the old party. You could say that he stole it from them. Now, it's maybe for this reason that we see President Biden trying to flip the script. Biden is now claiming, as one example of this, that it's the Republicans and not the Democrats who are against things like securing the U.S.-Mexico border. He actually recently wrote this. This is Biden on Twitter. The House Republican proposal will gut funding for over 2,000 Customs and Border Patrol protection agents in order to cut taxes for the rich. They just told Border Patrol that billionaires are more important than national security. Maybe billionaires like Soros bankrolling, the open borders guys. We'll see what happens with that. But it actually goes beyond this. Biden claimed recently as well that it's the quote-unquote MAGA Republicans who want to defund the police. Let me show you.
And so, folks, look, MAGA Republicans are calling for defunding the police departments and defunding the FBI now. That's a good one. I like that one. Well, guess what? And the refusal to provide funding is going to keep communities safe and secure. We talk about crime. Well, it's outrageous. My budget invests in public safety. It includes funding for more training, more support for law enforcement, at a time when they expect to play many roles. We expect our cops to be social workers. We expect them to be psychologists, mental health counselors. More cops are killed responding to domestic violence calls than anything else. Do you know that?
Are we living in like an alternate reality? Remember, folks, it was the Democrats. It was one of their main policies with defund the police. Open borders is a Democrat policy. The sanctuary cities that prevent deportation of criminal illegal aliens, that's a Democrat policy. And they're flipping the script. So why is Biden trying to convince people that the Democrat policies are actually Republican policies, or more specifically, MAGA Republican policies? Well, it's probably because these establishment narratives are not working. And the MAGA policies look like they are working. Why else would he adopt them? And that brings up a tough issue. How can they flip the script if people can fact check them? How can they suddenly shift the narratives if popular news hosts don't play by the rules and they expose the fake narratives being puppeted around? Well, they can't. The polling for Trump shows that the ability of mainstream influencers to control the narrative has failed. People don't believe them. And so what's the solution? Well, it seems the solution is to censor people. The solution apparently is to deplatform people who disagree, to make sure that any voice that would challenge the official narratives is not heard, or at the very least, very difficult to hear. And folks, this is how many of these MAGA Republicans are viewing the break also between Fox News and Tucker Carlson. That's how it's being interpreted. Tucker was really, if you look at it, he was a Trump phenomenon. His former show with Fox News, Tucker Carlson Tonight, that first aired in November of 2016. And Tucker represented the MAGA opinions that began aligning Fox with the Trump movement. And others like him joined later, like Dan Bongino, for example. They were seen as being outside the mainstream media system while still being technically in it. And they were said to have had a good amount of autonomy on what they chose to cover and what they chose to say. Now, the ousting of both of them is likewise being viewed as a purge, not just against MAGA news, but also of news coverage outside the control of the company's executives. Yet, as with Trump, the attacks don't seem to be working. And Tucker also looks like he's actually moving closer to Trump, interestingly. In fact, Washington Post claims it got a scoop that Tucker and Trump are now planning to hold an alternative Republican debate for 2024. That Trump. First he co-opted the Republican Party, and now he's co-opting the debates. If they take down if Tucker was meant to purge Trump from the mainstream news cycle, well, folks, as we've seen with all the other scandals, it looks like it may do just the opposite. Folks, that's all for tonight. Thank you for joining us in this new version of Crossroads. Again, weeknights, 7 p.m. Eastern on epochtv.com. In the next couple weeks, we'll also be adding interviews, more segments to the show, so stay tuned for that. And then starting May 15th, we'll also be broadcasting simultaneously, both on epochtv.com and on NTD Cable. For updates as well, follow us on social media. That's at Crossroads_Josh. As always, folks, stay informed,